Some people dream of luxury homes. Others dream of fast cars. Me, I dreamed of peace. After years of working and saving, I finally found it, a beautiful stretch of land far from the noise, the traffic, and best of all, far from any HOA. Now, if you've never dealt with a homeowners association, count yourself lucky. They start off sounding nice, promising order, cleanliness, and safety, but in reality, they're run by power-hungry folks who live to control others. That's why I made sure my land was outside of any HOA boundaries. This was my space, my rules, my peace, until one morning I stepped outside and realized I wasn't as free as I thought. I walked out onto my porch, coffee in hand, expecting the usual, birds chirping, trees swaying in the breeze, that feeling of absolute peace. But instead, I saw cars, not just one or two, at least a dozen. SUVs, sedans, even a golf cart. At first, I thought maybe there was an emergency. Maybe someone got lost? A car accident? Then I saw it, a bright blue HOA parking sign staked into the middle of my land. I blinked. Surely I was still half asleep. I walked closer, my coffee forgotten in my hand. There, in bold white letters, were the words, HOA overflow parking, residents only. My stomach dropped. I turned, scanning my land, and the more I looked, the worse it got. Tire tracks cut through my grass, creating a dirt road where none should exist. Joggers casually ran through my fields. And then I saw something that made my blood boil. A family, right in the middle of my land. Folding chairs set up, a cooler open, a full-blown picnic underway. I clenched my fists. What was happening here? I marched straight up to the nearest car and knocked on the window. The woman inside, middle-aged, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, sipping from an iced coffee, rolled it down slowly. "Yes?" she said, like I was interrupting her relaxation. I gestured to the land around us. "This is my property." She blinked unfazed. Then she actually smiled. "Oh, no, dear," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "This is HOA overflow parking." I felt my eye twitch. "No," I said, keeping my voice even. "This is my land. You're trespassing." She sighed dramatically, like I was being unreasonable. "Well, I was told homeowners could park here if the clubhouse lot was full." "Told by who?" She shrugged. "The HOA, of course." "Of course." I turned and scanned my land, looking for more clues. And then I saw it, a wooden post, a map nailed to it. I walked over, ripped it down, and stared in disbelief. Right there, in bold letters, my land was labeled as Community Green Space. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. These people hadn't just claimed my land. They had actually printed maps to make it look official. A man in an HOA-branded polo strolled up casually, a sandwich in hand. "Oh, you must be the new owner," he said, smiling. "Lovely spot, huh? The neighborhood has always used this area." I held up the map. "This isn't part of your HOA." The man barely even blinked. "Well," he said, "you should bring that up with the board." Oh, I planned to. I didn't waste a second. I stormed straight into the HOA clubhouse, a polished, overpriced building that reeked of self-importance. Past the bored-looking board members, past the cookie-cutter decor, and straight into the office of Karen. If you've ever met a Karen, you already know the type. Her office? A shrine to herself. Photos of her at HOA events, a giant oak desk, even a plaque that read Community Leader of the Year. She looked up, all fake politeness, and smiled like she'd been expecting me. "Ah," she said smoothly, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" I slapped the stolen HOA map and parking sign onto her desk. "You want to explain why my private property is labeled as a community green space?" Karen barely blinked. She didn't even look surprised. She sighed, shaking her head like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Oh, that?" she said. "There's no need to get upset. This is just a big misunderstanding." I crossed my arms. "A misunderstanding?" She nodded, tilting her head. "Yes, you see, Oak Ridge Estates has always used that land for recreational purposes. It's been an informal community space for years. I cut her off. Informal? That's a nice way to say illegally stolen. Her smile didn't falter. Well, she said sweetly, technically that's debatable. I took a slow, steady breath. Debatable? Karen reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a thick, color-coded binder. She flipped to a tab and tapped a highlighted paragraph. Yes, there's something called prescriptive easement. Since the HOA has maintained and enjoyed access to that land for years, the board has the right to request an easement review. I leaned forward, planting my hands on her desk. Karen, I said, my voice calm but firm. A prescriptive easement requires an official claim, a court ruling, and years of uncontested use. And even then, it doesn't transfer ownership. For the first time, her mask cracked, but she recovered quickly, flipping to another tab in her binder. Look, she said smoothly, there's no need to be difficult. The board is open to discussing compensation. Compensation? She actually thought I would rent out my own land to an HOA I didn't belong to? I laughed, a slow, humorless laugh. Oh, Karen, I said, shaking my head. You really don't get it, do you? She stiffened. I straightened. This isn't a negotiation. This is me telling you, back off. I turned to leave. Well, she called after me, voice cool. If you refuse to comply, the HOA may have no choice but to take legal action. I stopped. Slowly, I turned back to her. I smiled. Go ahead, I said. Take all the legal action you want. But when you do, I'll make sure every fraudulent map, fake parking sign, and trespassing report is put in front of a judge. Karen's expression tightened. For the first time, she looked nervous. She had picked the wrong fight, and she had no idea what was coming next. I thought I had shut this down. Karen had been caught red-handed. I told her to back off, and I figured that was the end of it. She'd admit defeat and move on. I was wrong. 2 days later, an official-looking envelope landed in my mailbox. Thick, heavy, stamped with a fancy-looking HOA seal. I tore it open, already feeling my blood pressure rise. And the moment I read the first line, I burst out laughing. Final notice. You are in violation of Oak Ridge Estate's HOA community access policies. Failure to comply will result in legal action, including but not limited to fines, liens on your property, forced assessment for community use. Liens? On MY land? I flipped to the next page. A list of fines. $500. Unauthorized restriction of public access. $750. Failure to comply with HOA regulations. $11,000. Interference with community functionality. Interference with community functionality? I set the letter down and took a deep breath. Karen wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. She was trying to make it look legal. And I knew exactly what she wanted. She wanted me to panic, to show up at her office, waving this letter, ready to negotiate. Instead, I did nothing. No phone calls. No emails. Silence. And that drove her absolutely insane. 2 mornings later, I heard voices outside. I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, and there they were. 4 HOA board members, lined up at the edge of my driveway. They weren't on my land. Not yet. But they were standing there, arms crossed, like they were waiting for something. I leaned against my truck, took a slow sip of coffee, and gave them a smile. Morning, I said, something I can help you with? The tallest one, a guy in khakis and a golf visor, cleared his throat. We're here on behalf of Oak Ridge Estates, he said, to discuss your ongoing violations. I let out a long sigh. Let me stop you right there. I set my coffee down, crossed my arms, and looked him dead in the eye. I'm not in your HOA. You don't have authority over my land. We're done here. Karen, second in command, a woman clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon, took a step forward. That's where you're mistaken, she said, giving me that practiced, fake smile HOA look. The HOA has a long-established right to this land. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, yeah? Show me the deed. She hesitated. Well, she said, clearing her throat, the board has voted unanimously to assess your property for shared community use. I actually laughed. A slow, deliberate laugh. You voted. I shook my head. You think a vote gives you legal ownership of my land? She wasn't done. If you refuse to comply, she said, we'll have no choice but to take legal action. I took a step forward, just enough for her to instinctively step back. I let my voice drop, low, even, measured. If I see a single one of you step foot on my land, I said, I will press trespassing charges. No warnings. No second chances. Silence. They exchanged uneasy glances. Because that wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I knew Karen wouldn't stop. Fake fines? Fake legal threats? Sending her little army to intimidate me? It was all predictable. But then, she did something unforgivable. She sold access to my land. It started with a voicemail. Hi there. This is Greg from Oak Ridge Realty. Just wanted to follow up on your interest in purchasing a premium lot in Oak Ridge Estates. I frowned. What? I hit redial. Hey, Greg. I said, you left me a message about buying a property in Oak Ridge Estates? Yes. He sounded thrilled. We have some beautiful premium lots still available. Would you like a tour? I rubbed my temples. Greg, I already own land here. A pause. You do? Yeah. And last I checked, my land isn't for sale. Greg hesitated. Well, sir, I'm not sure what you mean. The HOA listed several lots as part of their expanded recreational space. My stomach twisted. Greg, I said slowly, where exactly is this expanded space? There was a shuffling of papers. Then he read my exact address. I hung up, opened my laptop, and what I found made my blood boil. The HOA had updated their website. They had a section for prospective buyers. And right there in bold text, Oak Ridge Estates is proud to offer exclusive private trails, community event spaces, and premium green space for all residents. Next to it, a map, and guess what was labeled as HOA recreational land? My property. I barely slept that night. And the next morning, they crossed the final line. I stepped outside and froze. There were workers on my land, not just walking through, landscaping it. One guy was on a riding mower, cutting my grass. Another was installing a wooden sign. I walked up slowly. The workers barely even noticed me. And then I saw it. The sign they were installing read, Welcome to Oak Ridge Private Trails. HOA members only. I was done. This wasn't just trespassing. This wasn't just harassment. This was criminal. I made one phone call. By the afternoon, I had hired a contractor. And by the end of the week, I had a heavy-duty industrial. I woke up early the next morning, grabbed a cup of coffee, and stepped out onto my porch. The air was crisp, the sky a soft orange as the sun began to rise. It should have been a peaceful moment, but I knew it was coming. Sure enough, just as I took my first sip, I heard it. What is this? I turned toward the front of my property, and there she was, Karen. She stood at my brand-new steel-reinforced fence, gripping the bars like she could shake them loose. Behind her, two HOA board members stood awkwardly, shifting on their feet. They didn't look so confident anymore. Karen, though, she was fuming. She turned toward me, her face red, her blonde bob practically trembling with rage. You can't do this, she screamed. You are blocking community access. I took another slow sip of my coffee. Morning, Karen. She jabbed a finger toward the towering fence. This is illegal. I smiled. No, what's illegal is trespassing on private property, which is exactly what you and your little HOA have been doing. Karen's nostrils flared. She spun toward the board members. Say something, she hissed at them. One of the men cleared his throat. Well, this does seem a little extreme. I let out a small chuckle. Extreme? I walked down from my porch, stopping just a few feet from the fence. I wanted them to see the look on my face. You mean extreme like stealing someone's land? Like faking maps to claim property that doesn't belong to you? Or maybe you mean extreme like selling access to land that's legally mine. The man swallowed hard. Karen, though, wasn't ready to give up. She straightened her blazer and crossed her arms. Well, She said smoothly, I hope you're ready, because the HOA has already approved legal action against you. I didn't even blink. I smiled. Funny you should mention that, I said, reaching into my back pocket. I pulled out a thick folder and flipped it open. Inside, a cease and desist order against the HOA for trespassing, fraud, and unauthorized commercial use of private property. Karen's smirk faded. What is that? She stammered. I held up the last page, showing her my lawyer's signature. It's my lawsuit against you. Silence. Karen's hands clenched into fists. The board members behind her took a step back. For the first time, Karen looked scared. Karen had spent years controlling this neighborhood. She made the rules. She enforced the fines. She had power. But now, her little kingdom was falling apart. The moment my lawsuit was filed, an investigation was launched. And let me tell you, what they found was worse than I imagined. Karen had been embezzling HOA funds for years. She used HOA money to pay for personal vacations. She forged homeowner signatures to fake property agreements. She created fraudulent maps to claim land that wasn't hers. And the biggest crime of all? She knowingly sold access to my land. She scammed dozens of new homeowners, convincing them their HOA fees included private trails and community picnic areas that never actually belonged to the HOA. When the homeowners found out, they turned on her. Fast. One by one, they started filing their own lawsuits. The same people who once followed Karen's every command, now they wanted her gone. And the rest of the HOA board, they were panicking. They claimed they had no idea Karen was doing anything illegal. Yeah, right. But the damage was done. Karen had gone too far. And now, she was about to lose everything. With lawsuits stacking up, the HOA was running out of money fast. Homeowners were demanding refunds of fees they had paid under false pretenses. The final nail in the coffin, the HOA's insurance company dropped them. Without insurance, they couldn't afford lawyers. They couldn't fight me. So instead, they folded. Within weeks, the HOA was officially dissolved. No more fake rules. No more fines. No more HOA. Karen? She had one final battle to fight. Karen didn't just lose her position. She lost everything. When the case went to court, the judge didn't hold back. She was found guilty of fraud, trespassing, and embezzlement. At first, she tried to plead for leniency. She sobbed in court, blaming the board, blaming the homeowners, blaming me. She claimed she was just trying to protect the community. The judge didn't buy it for a second. Instead of fine or probation, Karen was sentenced to prison. The same woman who once threatened legal action against homeowners now had a legal record of her own. And every single time I passed by her old house, now empty and abandoned, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in months, I had peace. I walked my land, the place I had fought so hard to protect, and let out a deep breath. I had won. This wasn't just about property. This was about standing up for what's right. Because here's the truth. If you don't fight for what's yours, someone else will take it. If you let bullies push you around, they'll keep pushing. If you know your rights, no one can intimidate you. I took one last sip of coffee, watching the sunrise over my fenced-in, peaceful land. No HOA. No Karen. Just peace. And that was worth every second of the fight.